So for our second day of 8.5, we're going to use the law of cosines today. And our math humor says, which trigonometric ratios do pig farmers use?
Swine and co-swine. All right, so continuing on, you guys, law of cosines. Law of cosines I like to think of as your last resort, okay? We use the law of cosines to solve for a triangle, but only if you can't use the law of sines. Okay, remember this is not for right triangles. If you get right triangles, you use SOHCAHTOA, Pythagorean theorem, okay? If you don't have right triangles, the first thing you want to try is the law of sines, and then remember the last resort, law of cosines. Okay, so the law of cosines says, let's say I have my general triangle, ABC, again, across from the angle A is little a, little c, little b, so on and so forth, okay? Then what's going to happen is on the next slide here, we're going to have certain equations that hold true. Okay, now depending on what we're looking for, that's what determines what starts it out. So if we're looking for A's, either the side A or angle A, clearly A would go first and last. If we're looking for the B's, either angle B or side B, we'll be using this B equation. And if we're looking for C's, it will be the C's here. Now, all three of these equations are the exact same thing. Okay, they are the exact same thing. The only thing that's different is what we're looking for. If we're looking for A, B, or C. Okay, so to use the law of cosines, we're going to start out easy, finding the length of a third side, okay? First things first, I want you to take a look. This is not a right triangle, so you can't use SOHCAHTOA, okay? Remember, you need an angle on its opposite side. We need two sets in order to use the law of sines. Clearly, this isn't happening. So our last resort is using the law of cosines. Now, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for A, and there's its angle, 51. This is what we're going to start with, the side, and what we're going to end with, the angle. So I'm going to write out just a general form. A squared equals, what is that? The B squared plus C squared minus 2BC with the cosine of A. And I'm going to start plugging things in, okay? I'm looking for side A, so that's going to stay A squared. Now B and C represent the other two sides. It doesn't matter which one goes in for which, as long as you get them in the excuse me, the equation. So I'm going to do 40 squared, 45 squared, minus 2 times 40 and 45. And then I have the cosine of the angle. Now the angle that's across from the side that I want is 51. So it's going to be 51. Now the cool thing about this, you guys, is that your calculators will take care of this for you. If you type this in using the parentheses and everything, you will be able to actually get a value. You'll end up with A squared equaling 1,359.45. Okay? Now if you wanted to do each one of these individually, take 40 squared, 45 squared, and then 2 times 40 times 45, and then the cosine of 51. I mean, you could do that if you'd like, but your calculator has the capability of taking all of this and coming up with this value. If you get stuck, please let me know. But this is where we want to find it, or this is what we should get after we find that. So we have A squared equals all of this, so in order to find A, we have to take the square root. Okay, so A is roughly 36.87. Easy, easy, easy. All right, so the second situation is if we're looking for the angle. I want angle A. Now, again, this is not a right triangle, so you can't use SOHCAHTOA. We don't have angles and they're opposite sides, so you can't use the law of sines, so we have to resort to using the law of cosines. I'm going to circle the angle that I want with its corresponding side, 5 here, and I'm going to write out my general form. So I've got A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC with the cosine of A. And I'm going to plug in what I know. Now A I actually have now. Little a, remember, represents the side. So I've got 5 squared equals, B and C are the other two sides. It doesn't matter which one goes where. So I'm going to do 6 squared plus 7 squared, 2 times 6 times 7. And now this time, the cosine of the angle is A. This is what we're looking for. You should know now, if we're looking for an angle, at some point we're going to take the inverse. With this, I'm going to break this into 3 parts. This is part 1. This is part 2, and this is part 3. So 5 squared is 25. 6 squared plus 7 squared is 85. And then 2 times 6 times 7 is 84. And don't forget you have your cosine of A. Okay? Once you break it into 3 parts, you're going to do 3 things. You're going to subtract, divide, inverse. Subtract, divide, inverse. Okay, so 3 parts, then 3 steps. So first things first, we're going to subtract the 85. So we get negative 60 equals negative 84 cosine of A. Then we're going to divide. So I'm going to divide by negative 84. Now 2 negatives here make it positive. Leave this as a fraction, you guys. You end up with 60 over 84 equals the cosine of A. Now if I want A, we have to move the cosine. And when I move that over, you get the inverse cosine of 60 over 84 is A. Typing that into your calculator, you guys should get about 44 degrees. So this one, when we want to find angles, clearly takes a little bit longer. But if you remember, 3 parts, 3 steps, you're good to go. All right, so I would like for you guys to try this first one. This first one, we're looking for the side length. Remember, this goes together. So I would like for you to please write it out, and then we'll see how we do. All right, so here's my missing side. So I've got x squared. Now the 4 and the 7 were the other 2 sides, and then you have the cosine of 48. Okay, remember now, if we're looking for the side, you can type all of this into your calculator. So you should get x squared is about 27.53. And when you take the square root, you guys, you get x is about 5. Okay? In this next one, we're looking for the angle. So set it up, and then remember 3 parts, 3 steps. Subtract, divide, inverse. All right, so we want we want the angle here, so the 172 goes first. 98 and 150 find their spots, and then the cosine of x. So the first step was to do 3 parts. So I squared that, squared them and added them, and then multiplied. So now we subtract. So if you take 295.84 and you subtract 32.104, you should end up with a negative 2520, negative 2940 cosine of x. So that's a subtract. Then you should divide. Remember, the negatives cancel, so you should have the inverse cosine of 2520 over 29,400. Okay, this should give you about 85 degrees. All right, so now let's work through this problem. This is probably more realistic of what we're going to be looking for. They're going to ask you to find multiple pieces, okay? So first step, they want you to find A. Looking at this picture and what they give you, the only way to find A is to use the law of cosines. Okay? So A squared equals, what is it? 1916. So 19 squared plus 16 squared. 2 times 19 times 16. And then the cosine of 35. Please find A. Come back, and then we'll see if we end up with the same answer. All right, remember, because of the problem, you could type all of this in. You get 118.96, and then when you take the square root, you get A is about 11. So this is about 11. All right, so now they're looking for angle B. Well, I want you to take a look. Now that I know what A is, we've got an angle its opposite side, angle on its opposite side. So to find B, you don't have to use the law of cosines anymore. We have enough information to use the law of sines. So I'm going to take, what is this, 35 and 11? So the sine of 35 over 11. And then we have the sine of x, because that's what we want, or we should call it B, sorry, over 16. Go ahead and use your law of sines, please, to help you solve for B. All right, so we cross multiplied, you get 11 times the sine of B, 16 times the sine of 35. Divide by 11 and take your inverse. Hopefully, when you calculated this, angle B should be 57. And now if you take a look at the information, you should see you don't have to use either the law of sines or the law of cosines. In a triangle, you should get the sum of 180 degrees. 35, 57, and 88 will get you the 180 degrees. Okay? So we're going to be using multiple different types of strategies to help us solve. We've got SOHCAHTOA, we've got Pythagorean theorem, we've got our knowledge of 180 degrees for a triangle, we've got law of sines, law of cosines. We want to be able to now get familiar with when and where to use each one of these pieces. Please come prepared with questions tomorrow. Have a good night, you guys.